Welcome everyone to the fourth in the Center for Information Technology Policy's Fall Lecture Series. Today we're very lucky to have here Professor Luis von Ahn from Carnegie Mellon University. Luis got his bachelor's degree in math from Duke. He went to graduate school in computer science at Carnegie Mellon, and they have not let him get away. He's now an assistant professor of computer science at Carnegie Mellon. And he's done a number of noteworthy things in computer science, which have led to him inventing technologies that all of us use, and receiving a MacArthur Genius grant, and so on. Today he's going to talk about human computation, and in particular about a technology known as computer games, which I'm not familiar with. I understand it's some kind of frivolous activity involving the clicking of buttons. Probably many of you are much too busy and self-disciplined to engage in this, but he'll let us know what it's about and how we can use it for good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I want to start by asking you guys a question. How many of you have had to fill out some sort of web form where you've been asked to read a distorted sequence of characters or a distorted word such as this one? Yeah, how many of you found it really, really annoying? Outstanding. Okay, well, I invented that. That thing is called a CAPTCHA, and the reason it's there is to make sure that you, the entity filling out the form, are actually a human and not some sort of computer program that was written to submit the form millions and millions of times. The reason it works is because humans, at least non-visually impaired humans, have no trouble reading these distorted characters, whereas computer programs simply can't do it as well yet. Okay, so CAPTCHAs are used all over the place. They're used in hundreds of thousands of websites, and since they're used so often, a lot of times the precise sequence of random characters that are shown to the user is not so fortunate. So for example, here, this is from Yahoo. The random characters shown to the user happen to be W-A-I-T, which spell out the word wait. But the funny thing is the help message that the Yahoo help desk got about 20 minutes after this was shown. The person... They thought they had to wait. This, of course, is not as bad as this poor person who restarted their computer. Okay, so CAPTCHAs are used all over the place, and they have all kinds of applications. And I could spend the next hour talking about all the different applications. But since I don't want to do that, I want to illustrate one of the applications through a little story. And the story is this. A few years ago, Slashdot put up this precise poll asking which is the best computer science graduate school in the United States. It's not me. That's the poll that Slashdot put. If you think about it for a second, this is a really dangerous question to ask over the web. Because as soon as the poll went up, students at Carnegie Mellon wrote a program that voted for Carnegie Mellon thousands of times. The next day, students at MIT wrote their own program. And a few days later, the poll had to be taken down because both Carnegie Mellon and MIT had more than 7 billion votes. and every other school had less than 1,000. So I guess if you think about it, the poll did exactly what it was supposed to do in this case. I mean, it worked perfectly. But in general, we simply cannot trust the results of an online poll because anybody could just write a program to vote for their favorite option. Now, one possible solution is to use a CAPTCHA to make sure that only humans can vote. Okay, that's one possible application of CAPTCHAs. Another application is free email services. So there's a lot of websites out there that offer free email services, like Yahoo, Google, Microsoft, etc. And up until a few years ago, they were all suffering from a very specific type of attack. And it was people who wrote programs to obtain millions and millions of email accounts every day. And the people who wrote these programs were spammers. So here's the thing. If you're a spammer and you want to send, first of all, if you're a spammer, it's actually quite worthwhile to send spam from yahoo.com because nobody's going to go and block all of yahoo.com. Right? So it's quite worthwhile. And if you want to send spam from Yahoo accounts, you run into the problem that each Yahoo account allows you to send only like 100 messages a day. So if you want to send gazillions of messages every day from Yahoo accounts, you have to obtain millions and millions of Yahoo accounts. And this is why spammers wrote these programs. And the solution to this was to use a CAPTCHA to make sure that only humans can obtain these free email accounts. Okay, so in general, CAPTCHAs are used to stop spammers or bad people from doing bad things on the web. Now, of course, spammers, hello. Okay. Of course, spammers have started coming up, since this is used to stop spammers from doing bad things, spammers have started coming up with all kinds of dirty hacks to get around the CAPTCHAs that are being used in practice. Here's one of them. We call them CAPTCHA sweatshops. So spam companies are actually hiring humans to solve CAPTCHAs all day long. Okay, this is currently happening. It's actually happening usually in other countries where the minimum wage is a lot lower, okay? But it's currently happening. But there's at least two consolations. First, it's at least costing them some. So whereas before they could get millions of accounts for free, now they have to pay a fraction of a cent per account, so they can't get that many. Second, CAPTCHAs are actually generating jobs in underdeveloped countries, right? You should register to vote because I am. Okay, so that's one dirty hack. There's an even dirtier hack, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard about it. This is what some porn companies have started doing to get around the CAPTCHAs that are being used in practice. So first news item, there is pornography on the internet, in case you didn't know. So here's, there's a lot of pornography, and some of these porn companies also would like to send spam. And here's how they're doing it. Imagine that there's a porn company that would like to send spam from Yahoo accounts. So here's what they do. They write a program to try to obtain millions of Yahoo accounts. So what they do is they write a program that fills out the entire registration form at Yahoo. And whenever this program gets to the CAPTCHA, it can't read it. So what it does is it copies the CAPTCHA back to the porn page. Now, at the porn page, there's a lot of people looking at pornography. And one of them gets this screen saying, hey, if you want to see the next nude image, you got to type the word that's in the box below. And you know what people do? They type the word as fast as possible. and by doing so, they are effectively solving the CAPTCHA for the porn company bot. That is, they are effectively obtaining a free email account that the porn company can use to later spam you. Okay, so these pornographers are very smart people. Okay, so CAPTCHAs are used all over the place, and since they're used so often, a lot of times some people have started coming up with their own versions of CAPTCHA. So they want to be different, so they started coming up with their own different types of CAPTCHAs. Let me show you one of them. Here's one that started coming up with in some Russian sites. I call this the Russian CAPTCHA. So only in Russia can they believe that anybody can do this, right? It's the Russian CAPTCHA. Of course, this is not actually a very good CAPTCHA because computers can do this probably much better than humans can. As long as they can read the image, they can probably do this with like Mathematica. Okay? So that's the Russian CAPTCHA. Let me show you. Here's another one. This is the one that started coming up with in some sites in India. This is the Indian CAPTCHA. They have to analyze the circuit. So, anybody in India can analyze the circuit, right? Now, just to look at the differences, the cultural differences, right? The Russian CAPTCHA, you have to do some calculus. The Indian CAPTCHA, you have to analyze the circuit. Let me show you the CAPTCHA that I started coming up with in a few American blogs as of late. So this is the American CAPTCHA. It's like, I'm not even making this up. This is like, again, this is a very crappy CAPTCHA because computers can do that. Okay, so I could tell you stories about CAPTCHAs for hours. Let me very quickly move on to the future of CAPTCHA. This is a new project that we just started that's called ReCAPTCHA. We're reinventing CAPTCHAs. And the idea for this new project started from the following. It turns out that if you do the calculation, of the envelope calculation, it turns out that about 200 million CAPTCHAs are typed every day by people around the world. Okay, I type a CAPTCHA roughly once every 2 or 3 days. There's a lot of people like me, and if you add it all up, it's like 200 million CAPTCHAs are typed every day by people around the world. Now, when I first heard this number, I was quite proud of myself. I thought, look at the impact that this research has had. But then I started feeling bad. See, here's the thing. Each time you type a CAPTCHA, essentially, you waste 10 seconds of your time. And if you multiply that by 200 million, you get that humanity as a whole is wasting about 500,000 hours every day typing these annoying CAPTCHAs. Okay, so then I started feeling bad. And then I started thinking, well, of course, we can't just get rid of CAPTCHAs because the security of the web sort of depends on them. But then I started thinking, is there any way in which we can make good use of this human effort? See, here's the thing. While you're typing a CAPTCHA, essentially your brain is doing something amazing. Your brain is doing something that computers cannot yet do very well. Okay, so is there some way in which we can make good use of those 10 seconds while you're typing a CAPTCHA? Another way of putting it is there's some huge problem that we cannot yet get computers to solve, but that somehow we can split into tiny 10-second chunks such that each time you type a CAPTCHA, you solve a little bit of this problem. Okay, and the answer to that is yes. And so what we are doing now is every time that people are typing CAPTCHAs, they're actually helping us to digitize books. Okay, so the idea is the following. There's a lot of projects out there trying to digitize books. Like Google has one, the Internet Archive has one. What they're doing is they're taking old books that were written before the computer age, like before 1980, and they're scanning them. Okay, they're doing this so that they can put them on the internet and anybody can access them. This is generally a good thing. Now, in the digitization process, the first thing you do is you scan a book. Now, scanning a book is like taking a photograph of every page. It gives you a digital image for every page of the book. The next step in the process is you have to transform that digital image into a text file. Okay, you need to have a program that deciphers the text that is in this image and figures out what the text is. Okay, so transform this image into something like a Word file. That's done using a technology called OCR for optical character recognition. The problem with OCR, of course, is that it doesn't always work very well. For example, this is just an example that I picked out, a real example. And here, if you run OCR on this, it makes two mistakes. One of them is the word X-rayed, change it to X-rated, which I find funny. But in general, if you look at books that were in before 1900, because the ink has faded and the pages have yellowed, OCR makes about 30% mistakes at the word level. Okay, so it makes a lot of mistakes at the word level. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take all the words that OCR cannot read, and we're getting people to read them for us while they're typing CAPTCHAs on the internet. Okay, so the idea is this. We take a scanned book, then we take all the words that OCR cannot read. Now, how do we know which words cannot be read by OCR? Well, it turns out that OCR actually gives you a confidence score for every word. It tells you whether it is, how certain it is about a word. So we're taking all the words that OCR is not very confident about. Okay, these are the words that OCR cannot read, and we're going to use these as the basis for a CAPTCHA. Notice, these are perfect for a CAPTCHA because these are, by definition, words that the computer cannot decipher. Okay, so we're going to take this word, we're going to distort it even more to make it even harder to read for the computer, and we're going to use this as a CAPTCHA. Now, you might be wondering, how can the system use this as a CAPTCHA if the system itself doesn't know the answer for this word? I mean, this is a word that the system got out of a book. It got it because OCR didn't know what it was, and now it's going to present it to somebody, presumably whenever they're getting a Yahoo account. It should be the case that if the human enters the word between, we give them the account, but if they don't enter the word between, we don't give them the account. Now, how can the system do that if it doesn't know the answer? The solution to that problem is what we're going to do is whenever we get a new word out of a book, brand new word, one for which OCR doesn't know the answer, we're actually going to give it to the user along with another word, one for which we somehow figured out the answer beforehand. Okay, so we're going to give people two words, one for which the system does know the answer, one for which the system doesn't know the answer. We're not going to tell people which one's which, and we're going to say, please type both. And if they type the correct word for the one for which the system already knew the answer, the system assumes they are human. Okay, and we're also going to get some confidence that they also typed the correct word for the new one. And if we repeat this process to multiple humans, so we give this new word to multiple different users, and they all agree that it is the word between, then we will have with overwhelmingly high probability that this new word really is the word between. Okay, so this is the process for one word. This is how it works. So what we've done is, as of about a year ago or so, we created this a web service called reCAPTCHA, where the idea is if you're a website like Facebook that needs CAPTCHAs to protect yourself against spam, then you can you have two choices. Either you make your own CAPTCHA, or you come talk to us and we give you CAPTCHAs for free. The only caveat is that we get to see what your users type on these CAPTCHAs so that we can get to digitize words. Okay, so we released this web service as of about a year ago, and ever since then, all kinds of websites have started switching from their old CAPTCHA to this new one. So for example, Facebook is now using it, so whenever you get a Facebook account, you help digitize a word. Ticketmaster is using it, so whenever you search for tickets online, you help digitize a word. Craigslist, Twitter, Last.fm, and about, by now, something like 65,000 other websites are using reCAPTCHA and helping us digitize words. And since so many websites are using reCAPTCHA, the number of words that we're digitizing per day is extremely high. So this actually is a little old. By now, we are digitizing something like 25 million words per day by just having people solve CAPTCHAs on the internet. Okay, so digitizing a lot of words. In fact, if you wanted to do this by paying people, so the other alternative is you could pay people to type words for you. You'd have to hire, I don't know what the number is anymore, but it's something like 3,500 people, full-time employees, digitizing words to go this fast. Okay, and I get... Sorry, yeah. Actually, I'm going to talk about that in a second. Good point. Okay, now since we're serving so many CAPTCHAs per day, since we're doing so many words per day, again, funny things can happen. And this is especially true because now we're giving people two English words that are randomly juxtaposed. Okay, so you can get funny things. So for example, we presented this word, which by itself is not bad. It's just the word Christians. But if you put it along with another randomly chosen word, you can get bad things. So for example, we presented this CAPTCHA, which is somewhat funny. But it's even funnier because the particular website where we presented this CAPTCHA is there's many websites using reCAPTCHA. The particular website where we presented this one is called the Embassy of the Kingdom of God, which is an ultra-Christian website. Oops. This is another really funny one, johnedwards.com. Oops. So anyways, we insult people every day. And there's not much you can do about this because one of the words we don't know the answer for. So there's not much you can do about this. OK, now, some of you might be thinking, wait a second. You started by saying about 500,000 hours every day are wasted by people typing CAPTCHAs. And your solution is to give people 2 words instead of 1? Aren't you just doubling the amount of time that it takes to do CAPTCHAs? And it turns out that's not quite true. So it happens that typing 2 English words actually takes equally as long as typing 6 to 8 random characters, which is what other websites are using. The standard CAPTCHAs are now about 6 to 8 random characters. We give 2 English words. Turns out because English words have patterns to them, it takes about equally as long to do both. So we haven't actually increased the time. And the other thing is we actually need both words. We really can't really get away with one because we're using the system where we need both words. Okay.
How often does it happen? Breaking the text down into words actually gives you 2 words in the image, so that you're actually presented with 3.
That's very rare. I mean, I think that happens, but it's like less than 1 in 10,000. It's very rare. OK, so another question is where do the words come from? So the words actually are coming from 2 places. One of them is the Internet Archive, which is digitizing books that were written before 1923 because they have lost copyright by now. And the other place is the New York Times. So we're actually digitizing the entire archive of the New York Times from the first edition was like in 1851 to 1980. So there's 130 years of the New York Times that we're digitizing. And we're going to be done, since we're going so fast, we're going to be done in like mid-2009 doing the whole New York Times. OK, another thing that I want to get back to is this idea of CAPTCHA sweatshops. So if you recall, I told you spam companies are actually hiring humans to type CAPTCHAs all day long. This is still happening with reCAPTCHA. But now notice the irony. Okay? Spam companies are hiring humans to type CAPTCHAs all day long, which are being used to digitize books. Okay, so spammers, we've turned spammers into good people. Right? they're doing a good job. OK, and another thing that I want to show is a conversation that we actually recently had with a spammer. Actually, it was a conversation that we had with one of these people who owns a CAPTCHA sweatshop. So the idea is, with reCAPTCHA, we have a help email account that people can email us. And we also have a help IM account. So this particular person contacted us through our IM account. He started by saying, would you help us find some CAPTCHA project? Now, when he first said this, we had no idea what he meant. So we asked him, what kind of CAPTCHA project are you looking for? And then in his next answer, that's when we realized that we were talking to one of these people who owns the CAPTCHA sweatshop. Okay, so in his next answer, he said, they're manually breaking a different type of CAPTCHA right now. They have the ability to type every day many CAPTCHAs. Tell us how we can help you. Now, I don't know if you see the irony here. This is like contacting the police saying, I have a crime to commit. Right? I mean, I don't know how this person contacted us. But in any case, when he contacted us, we had him right there. So we started asking him questions, right? Why not? So then we started asking him questions like, how fast can you type? Just to know how fast they can go. And he told us, personally, he can type more than 60 words per minute, but he has a big team. He can give us a lot of product. No, and then we asked him, another thing we were wondering is, does he feel bad that he's helping spammers? Okay, so, do you mind helping spammers? And he said he didn't really feel bad. He just told me the details first. And then we thought the question that we really should ask him, this was really key. We asked him this question, how does he deal with IP address blocking? See, here's the thing. reCAPTCHA has a thing that if your IP address has solved like 10,000 CAPTCHAs today, you're fishy. And we're going to block you. Okay? Normal IP addresses solve like 3 CAPTCHAs per day. If your IP address is solving like 10,000 a day, we block you. Okay? But somehow these CAPTCHA sweatshop people are getting around the IP address blocking. So we asked him. We said, how do you deal with that? And he went and told us exactly how they get around IP address blocking. Okay? He told us everything. He told us exactly how they do it. So now we know. Now we can figure them out. We can, in fact, block them. But why block them when you have this great resource at hand, right? So instead of blocking them, what we started doing is whenever we think that you are one of these CAPTCHA sweatshop people, this is the CAPTCHA that you get. Just type the whole paragraph. Just give them a whole paragraph. And the thing is, for the first 2 or 3 weeks, it worked. They were doing the whole thing. Then they stopped, right? Okay, in any case, yes?
So in original CAPTCHAs, you can have random characters.
Yeah.
So it would seem hard to break that relative to, I know it's an English word.
Yeah.
And in your OCR application, you want to give any word that you're not pretty sure of, because
Yeah.
you don't want to have a high error rate in your OCR.
That's right.
But then, so there's some probability that the automatic algorithm can break it.
Yeah.
1 out of 3.
Yeah.
But then, as a spammer, I
Yeah,
get
that's
1
why-
out of 3 email accounts. And so I
That's
figure
why.
it out instead of a million.
Yeah, that's a very good question. That's a very good question. That's why we distort the word more.
Oh, I see.
See, that we have that extra distortion step. That's why we distort it more. Yep. Okay. Now, if you think about it, what reCAPTCHA allows us to do is to reuse wasted human cycles. Okay, I've taken an activity that if you just do the math, it turns out that in the United States, the average American spends about 1.9 seconds per day solving CAPTCHAs. And I've shown you how we can use these 1.9 seconds for something that's good for humanity. Okay, of course, the average American does many other things throughout the day. This is from a survey of 10,000 Americans done by the US government. This is how Americans spend their day. Now, what's funny to me when I first saw this is, where's work here? Yeah, I think it's other. Actually, I think it falls between many of them because there's also email and IM, and I assume that's some work, and TV and sleeping. Okay, so average American spends their day doing many other things. Now what I want to do is I want to take another slice of the pie, electronic games. It turns out that the average American spends 1.1 hours every day playing electronic games. This is computer or video games. And I want to show you how we can make good use of these wasted human cycles. Okay, and my favorite way of starting this next part of the talk is with a little statistic. And the statistic is that over 9 billion human hours of solitaire were played in 2003. 9 billion. Now, just to give you an idea of how large this number really is, let me give you 2 other numbers. First is the number of human hours that it took to build the Empire State Building. Turns out it took only 7 million human hours to build the entire Empire State Building, and that's equivalent to 6.8 hours of people playing solitaire around the world. Now, in case you don't think the Empire State Building is a monumental enough task, let me give you another number. The Panama Canal. Okay, it turns out that it took only 20 million human hours to build the entire Panama Canal, and that's equivalent to a little less than a day of people playing solitaire around the world. Okay, what I want to do now is I want to show you how we can make good use of these wasted human cycles. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some problems that computers cannot yet solve, and I want to show you how we can easily solve these problems for computers just by getting people to play games online. Okay, the first problem I want to talk about is the problem of labeling images with words. Okay, so the problem is as follows. When input an arbitrary image, we would like to output a set of keywords that properly and correctly describe this image. Now, in case you don't know this, you should already know this, this is still an open problem in computer vision and artificial intelligence in the sense that computer programs in general cannot do this. Okay? However, if we had a method that could label images with words, such a method would have many other applications, one of which you've probably already seen, and that is image search on the web. So Google, for example, says Google Images. You can go there and type a word like dog and get back a lot of images related to the word dog. Now, it is the case that there's no computer program out there that can tell you whether an arbitrary image from the web contains a dog or not. So the way image search on the web works is by using file names and HTML text. So if you search for dog, you get back a lot of images named dog.jpg or dog.gif, or that have the word dog very near them in the website. The problem with this method, of course, is that it doesn't always work very well. For example, in this first page of results on Google Images as of about a year and a half ago, there's an image of a rabbit right here. There's a guy in a blue suit right here. What the hell? But if we had a method such that for every image on the web could give us accurate textual descriptions of those images, we could greatly improve the accuracy of image search on the web. Okay? So what we want, and what I'm going to tell you right now, is a method that can label all images on the web. And not only that, it's a method that can label all images on the web in a way that's fast and cheap. Okay? How are we going to do it? Well, we're going to use humans, but we're going to use them cleverly. Okay, so normally, if you ask people to label images for you, you have to pay them to do so because labeling images is a very boring task. And if you wanted to label all images on the web by paying people, you'd have to pay a lot of money because there's a lot of images on the web. And even if you had a lot of money, if you wanted to label all images on the web by paying people fast, you'd have to find a lot of people who are willing to label images for a living. Good luck with that. My method is much better. Rather than paying people to label images for me, I get them to want to label the images for free. In fact, they want to label the images so much that in some cases, they're even willing to pay me to label the images for me. Okay, how do I do that? Well, I have what some people consider an extremely enjoyable game called the ESP game that people really like to play for some reason. And as people play, sort of as a side effect, they're actually labeling images for me. Okay, now, the ESP game has two very nice properties. First, as people are playing the game, the labels that they're generating while they're playing the game are actually guaranteed to be correct, even if the players don't want them to be correct. Okay, second, as people playing the game, they're actually labeling images very, very fast. In fact, using a pretty good estimate, I'm going to show you in a few slides that if you put the ESP game on a popular gaming site, you could actually label all images on Google in just a few weeks, okay, for free. Okay, so how does the game work? Well, first and foremost, the ESP game is a two-player online game. So there's a website. You can go there to try to play the game. Whenever you go to the website, you get randomly paired with somebody else wanting to play the game. That's your partner. Now, you're not allowed to communicate with your partner. You don't know who your partner is. You don't know anything about your partner. It's just a complete stranger from the web. And now the goal of the game is for both you and your partner to type the exact same word, given that the only thing you two have in common is that you can both see the same image. Okay, so you can both see the same image. You know you can both see the same image. And now you're told, type whatever the other guy's typing. Turns out that what people do, the best strategy is just to type a lot of words related to the common image. Okay, so both players are going to be typing a lot of words related to common image until one of player one's words is equal to one of player two's words. They agree, they get points, and then they get a brand new image. Now, this word that the two players agree on is usually a pretty good label for the image because it comes from two relatively independent sources. Okay, so to show you how the game, let me show you. I don't know if this is going to be live or if it's going to use the recording, but I'm going to try to show you if I have a connection. Okay, this is just a recording. So this is a recording of people playing the ESP game. So this is the two players. Here so the players cannot see what the other one's typing. They're just typing words completely independently, and I guess player two is not typing anything. Eventually, they'll type something, or not. Okay, there. And whenever they agree on an image, there's Willie Nelson. Oh, there. Okay, so they know who. Okay, and eventually they agree, and then they get points, and that's it. Okay. Uh-oh. Hopefully they're not typing anything bad. Okay. Some of the images are R-rated. Okay, so this is what the game looks like. Basically, both players have a certain amount of time to agree on as many images as they can with their partner. Each time they agree on an image, they get a certain number of points. There's also a thermometer at the bottom that measures how many images the two players have agreed on. And if they manage to fill the thermometer, they get like a gazillion million points. There's also a pass button, so players can agree to pass on difficult images. And another really important component of the game is this thing we call taboo words. If you ever play the game Taboo, you should be able to guess what these are. Taboo words are words that are related to the image that players cannot use when trying to agree on that image. Okay, so in this case, for instance, players cannot use dog or pillow or any plural or singular of these words. Now, where do taboo words come from? They come from the game itself. These are words that two other players have already agreed on for this particular image, so we don't want to collect them anymore. Okay, so the nice thing about taboo words is that they guarantee that each time an image passes through the game, it gets a brand new different label. Yes?
So every time someone matches, like two people match, that gets put on that list?
No. That is just the easy explanation for it. It doesn't. No, we do quite a bit of analysis before that. Yeah. The reason we don't do that is because we want to keep statistics on how many times people match on the word dog versus the word cat or versus whatever, so that we know what the most prominent objects are in the image. Okay. Now, the other nice thing about taboo words is that they make the game more difficult and therefore more fun. Now, talking about fun, is this game fun? It doesn't seem to be that enjoyable, from the description, but it turns out that somehow some people really like it a lot. So far, my version of the ESP game has collected over 50 million agreements, that is over 50 million labels, with about 200,000 players. Let me say that another way. 200,000 players have given us over more than 50 million labels. That means that on average, each player is playing a lot. There are many people who play over 20 hours a week. I used to say that's a full-time professor job, but now I'm a professor, and it's not. We've had playing streaks of longer than 15 hours straight. So I feel a little bad about this. So by now, the game has a mechanism that if you've been playing for longer than 15 hours, it will cut you off. And it's 10 hours if you come from a .edu domain. That's my contribution to education, right? Okay, so far over 50 million agreements. What if you wanted to label the entire web? Well, here's the thing. 5,000 people playing the game simultaneously could label all images on Google in 2 months. The striking thing here is that 5,000 is not a very large number. In fact, individual games in popular gaming sites such as Yahoo, Pogo.com, or MSN average well over 5,000 players at a time. So if you put the ESP game on a popular gaming site, you could label all images on Google in just a few weeks. Okay, now, you might wonder why hasn't this happened? And the answer is it just took a little while. So as of about maybe a year and a half or so, the ESP game was licensed by Google. They changed the name to something much lamer called the Google Image Labeler. And they put it there. Unfortunately, I can't tell you how many images they've labeled so far, but they've labeled a lot. Okay, and they are using it to improve their search engine. Okay, so let me show you a few things. So let me show you some search results. This is what happens when you search for the query dog using only labels from the ESP game. Okay, so you can see they're all dogs. More dogs, more dogs, more dogs, and you could go on forever. There's a gazillions of dogs. Here's another search query. This is jail. Yes. Jail. Okay. Another really interesting thing to see about the ESP game is how the guesses change over time. Because for certain images, the changes of guesses over time actually show cultural changes, okay, which is quite interesting. So here's an image. In case you don't know, this is Britney Spears. As of about 2 or 3 years ago, whenever this image was introduced to the game, the labels that we were getting were things like Britney. Sure, it's Britney Spears. Hot. Some people thought she was hot. But then as of, I don't know, 6 months ago or a year ago, or whenever her latest episode happened, the labels that we started getting were quite different. So we started getting things like crazy, rehab, she went to rehab, she shaved her head. So we started getting quite different labels. Another thing that's really interesting to see that I like to point out to people in this slide is actually the guesses that people enter tell us a lot about the players. Okay, for example, this is not true anymore, but it was 2 or 3 years ago. Whoever entered the word Britney, statistically speaking, with very high probability, they were younger than 40. Because they knew what Britney Spears looked like. Whoever entered the word hot, guess what? They were a male. Right? Okay, so by just looking at the words that you enter, we can learn a lot about you. In fact, one of my students did this. They wrote a little program that if we watch you play the ESP game for 15 minutes on randomly chosen images, we can figure out whether you're male or female with 98% probability by just watching you play the ESP game. We can also figure out your age within a 5-year age range with about 85% probability. Okay, so we can figure out a lot about you by just watching you play this stupid little game. Okay. Yes? Yeah, it's not necessary. I mean, it depends what you mean, right? For this particular image, especially if you're going to use this for computer vision, no, it's a terrible label. So yeah. Yeah, we use a number of agreements. Very few people actually agreed on shaved head. Many, many people agreed on Britney. So if you just count number of agreements, you can control for that. Yeah. Of course, I'm not going to claim that this is going to give only correct labels. Certainly, some things that people agree on might just be incorrect because the whole population believes that's something wrong, right? This is especially true. We get that a lot with plants or animals. You know, if it's something that looks like a dog, but it's actually a wolf, we get dog. Okay, so let me show you more sample labels. Here's an image. Just to prep you for one of the labels, this is an actor. His name is Walter Matthau, and he played in the movie Dennis the Menace, and he played the character of Mr. Wilson. Okay? Now, some of the labels that the ESP game has collected for this particular image are, okay. Okay. So that first one seems a little wrong, but actually, if you look closely, you realize it's really not that bad. I like to tell people the ESP game has uncovered a major conspiracy. Okay, now that we're on this topic, here's another image. Okay, I should say, I really have no political affiliations. I'm not even a US citizen. What I'm about to show you are merely the scientific results of what happens when you put this image on the ESP game. Okay, so some of the labels that the ESP game has collected for this particular image are, okay, that last one. Can you imagine how awesome the two players must have felt when they agreed on that last word? Okay, they must have felt awesome with each other. And this actually brings us to one of the reasons why people like the ESP game, and it's because they can feel a special connection with their partner, especially when they agree on an off-the-wall word like yuck for an image of President Bush. Okay, it gets even better. A lot of the emails we get about the game actually suggest that players feel a very, very, very special attraction to their partner. Okay, so people want to know whether their partner is of the opposite sex. People report that they like playing better with partners of the opposite sex. And a lot of the emails say things like, my partner and I, we look at the world in exactly the same way. Could you tell me their email address? The good thing is that finally, I'm going to be rich. We're going to charge a buck for that. Okay, more seriously, I'm not going to start charging a buck for that. But more seriously, this brings us to the question, why is it that people like the ESP game? I mean, it's true that the game was designed to be enjoyable, but what are some of the reasons why people say they like the game? And to address that, I'm just going to show you some of the things that people have told us of why they like the game. Here's one person. I'm just going to let you read. Okay. Okay, so special, connection with your partner. Here are some of the other most common things that people have told us of why they like the game. Okay, so that last one, it's completely unexpected, but if you think about it, it makes sense. The ESP game helps people learn English. You get an image, you got to say what it is in English. Now, you might wonder, well, can we have the ESP game in different languages? And the answer is sure, but I don't really want to spend time talking about that. Okay, so ESP game helps people learn English. Here's some of the things. So those are the things that people have emailed us. Some of the things that people have emailed us. Let me now show you some of the things that people have said about the ESP game in different blogs. By the way, the ESP game has been in literally over 20,000 blogs. Let me show you a couple of them. Here's one of them. Okay, sense of achievement. Okay. But the best is the way this guy ends. Okay. Here's another different guy. It's a different person. Okay, so this person actually likes the concept of the game. But again, the best is the way this guy ends. Okay, so not everybody likes their partner, and it completely depends on whether you do well with your partner or not. If you do well with your partner, you fall in love with them. If you do badly, you think they're an idiot. Of course, you're not the idiot, they're an idiot, right? Even though it's a completely symmetric game. Of course, not everybody has positive things to say about the game. Let me show you an email that I recently received. This is about, I don't know, 6 months ago or so. I got this email. Okay. Okay. I don't even know how to reply to this guy. But then I figured I don't have to reply because he knows. Crazy people. Okay, so if you think about it, there's nothing specific about images in the mechanism of the ESP game. Okay, everything that I just said perfectly could work for something like audio. Okay, we could have an audio version of the ESP game. I mean, it's still an open problem for computers to really tag audio with meaningful terms. So we could have an audio version of the ESP game. Two players listen to the same audio clip, and they have to agree on things that describe the audio clip. I thought this was a good idea, and I told my first-year PhD student that I thought she should work on that. And then she started working on it. She built it. She spent about 6 months making a really, really nice version. She built it, and then we tested it. We tested it on 13-year-old boys and girls. It's important to test it on 13-year-olds or some, kids of that age because they are honest and they'll tell you the truth. So for example, they told us that it turns out that the audio ESP game totally sucks. They really did not like it at all. Okay, and I was very surprised. My PhD student was very depressed. You know, I thought it was neat that they didn't like it. She thought it was terrible. But then instead of giving up, what she did is she actually went home and figured out how to change the game. She completely changed the rules of the game such that then it became fun for audio. Okay, this is very weird. So this is one of my PhD students, the one who did it, Edith Law. And here's what she did. So what I'm about to describe to you now is a game that will tag audio clips. Okay, so on input an audio clip, this game will give it proper tags that describe that audio clip. Okay, here's how it's going to work. First of all, it's a two-player online game, much like the ESP game, two randomly chosen people from the internet who don't know each other. But then there's a few twists. The first twist is that both players can see each other's guesses. So whereas in the ESP game it was key that people could not see each other's guesses, in this case we're going to let them see each other's guesses. Okay, that's the first twist. Second twist is that players may or may not be listening to the same song. Okay, so with 50% probability they're listening to the same song, with 50% probability they're not. Okay, and the goal of the game is for both of them to figure out whether they're listening to the same thing given each other's tags. Okay, so basically both players are going to be describing the thing, and they're going to see what the other person is describing, and they're going to try to figure out whether they're listening to the same thing or not. And if they both get it right, they both get points. Okay, so the basic idea is this is what the game looks like. It's called Tag a Tune. So you're going to be listening to some audio clip, and then you're going to have to describe it. So you might say something like it's rock, there's an electric guitar, and at the same time your partner's describing it. So they might say there's a loud electric guitar, it's rock. You might say there's a male singer, and then afterwards you both have to figure out whether you're listening to the same thing or a different thing. And notice, in this case, the system actually knows the answer because it knows whether it gave them the same clip or a different clip. So we can figure out whether they got it right. And if both players get it right, we give them points. It is key to make it so that both players have to get it right because that gives you an incentive to give correct labels so that your partner can also get it right. Okay? So if both players get it right, they both get points. And by looking at the things that people enter, these are really good descriptions for the audio clip. Okay, yes?
Can you type different?
Yeah, you can type different. And actually, some people type different or same. And so there's a set of about 15 words that we have to filter out of these results. Same, different, hello, stuff like that. Yeah, so you have to figure some stuff. Sorry. Yes?
What's to keep you from just copying your partner's words? If you see
Nothing, but you might get it wrong. Wait, what I mean, so essentially the goal of the game is for both of you to figure out whether you're listening to the same thing or not. Nothing keeping you from getting your partner's word, but if you copy them and you get it right, that means that the partner's words were actually good, and that's what we listen to. Yeah. Okay, so this game is actually part of a new gaming site that we just released called gwap.com for games with a purpose. We released it about, I don't know, 4 months ago or so, and it's going really well. We have 5 or 6 different games, all of which do something that computers cannot yet do. So as people are playing the game, they're solving a problem that computers cannot yet solve. Ever since we released it, we have, I don't know how many players we have by now, but it's something like 130,000 different players playing in the site, and that number is growing. Okay, so here's some URLs, www.recaptcha.net if you have a website that needs a CAPTCHA, recaptcha.net, www.gwap.com. Remember, you can't play for longer than 15 hours straight. And, 10 here, yeah, sorry. Go home if you want to play more. And that's it, that's all I have.
So in keeping with our tradition, let's see if we can get the first question from an undergraduate student. Anyone? We have quite a few here.
What sort of other tasks have you been looking at other than translating words?
So we've been looking at, what do you mean translating words? Tagging images?
Yeah, images.
So, okay, we've done books with reCAPTCHA, tagging images with the ESP game, tagging audio with Tag a Tune. The one that we haven't released, but we're looking at very heavily right now is language translation. We're trying to get people to translate text from one language to the other. But we actually made it a lot harder for ourselves because this game that we have coming out, I don't know when this is going to come out. It's probably like 9 months from now. You get to translate text, but you only need to know one language. This is really crazy. It can actually happen that we can get you to translate text when you only know the target language. If we give you enough information, to help you translate. Okay. Yeah.
Let's see. I played the Google Image Laser a little
Yeah.
bit, and I haven't played it for a while, but maybe a while back, I was playing and I kept noticing that obviously wrong words
Yeah, there are attacks because there's money involved in this.
And what do you know about that? What can you tell me about
Yeah, okay, so I certainly cannot tell you exactly what Google's doing. I can tell you what I would do if I were them, and that's probably what they were doing. Yes. People try to. So ours has been attacked a little bit. Theirs has been attacked a lot because there's actual money involved. For example, if you can get your image to be the first result on Britney Spears, there's money in that, right? So the way to stop these attacks is the following. You want to catch the cheaters, and here's how you catch them. You give them images for which we already know the answer. So if you just at random give them some images for which you already know the answer, that fully catches all the cheaters. So yeah, people enter those, but you can catch them. Yeah.
I was just curious to know whether you could try the ESP game with.
It's a very good question. We have not tried it on a large scale. We've only done a small test, and it seems like it could be really fun, especially since you can make it competitive, because you can make it so that the first two that agree get the points. Yeah, so we have not, there's no good reason why we haven't done that, other than we just haven't had time, but yeah.
Can you tell us your experiences with institutional review boards?
That's a very good question.
Your images are R-rated.
Some of them, yeah, so we do a lot of stuff. So with the images, we do a lot of stuff to try to filter them out. For example, we look at the website where they come from, and if it has any of these keywords like, you know, porn, XXX, etc., we don't get any images from that site. In addition, we use the game itself to try to filter things. So most images are repeated on the game multiple times, whereas pornographic images, what happens is the first time they get shown, guess what the first label that people are going to agree on is? Porn. So as soon as an image gets the label porn, these images get flagged for manual review by my graduate students.
That's in filtering the content and the experience, but what about the informed consent and deceiving your subjects and all the other stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, for the ESP game in particular, we had, essentially this was about a 6-month period of back and forth with the IRB until we eventually convinced them that it was okay because it was just an online game. Shh.
You said if you have a lot of fake plants, and I'm a gardener, and I like to look up plants, and I'm appalled by the little information that I get. Would it be possible for people who want to help certain categories to specify that?
Yeah, that's a very good idea. There's two possibilities. One is for you to specify, look, I want images of cars or plants because I'm good at it and that's what I like. And there's no, so we really should be doing that. And we've done tests, and it really, not only do people enjoy it better because you want to see images of that, you can do much better labels. We just haven't gotten around to doing that. But yes, we should do that. It's a very good point. Oh, yeah, with tunes, what we do is we take an initial tune and we split it into 30-second chunks. So we only give people a 30-second chunk, and they have to agree on something.
What's the set of tunes that you kind of categorize?
Oh, anything. Right now, we're just, I think there's two sources. One of them is music. We're using it for trying to get data for music information retrieval, which it comes from like Magnatune or something. It's this website where with music, you have this problem with people trying to sue you for copyright. It's not as bad as with images. With images it's not as bad. With music you actually have to watch out for it. And also this free sound project where we try to catalog like beeps and little things like that. And we're getting very good data. I don't know how it's going to be used. We're getting very good data. Yeah.
So for your ESP, the image data, I guess your goal is to try to get authentic labels of the images. So one question is, how do you consider an image is fully animated or fully labeled?
Yeah, it's a very good question. What we do, I don't know if what we do is a good idea. But here's what we do. Once we have enough taboo words that we display that people are always passing on that image, we figure out the ESP game is at least not giving us any more data on it.
So can I ask a follow-up?
Yes.
So in your psychology, it's known that labeling, people tend to name the images with the basic entry level.
Yep.
So for example, that dog picture, very difficult to get the label mammal out of it.
Yep.
Even though
Not other than the fact that taboo words help some, but they don't, I agree. The vast majority of labels are on this, not too general, but not too specific, these common terms that, I don't know what they call them in psychology, like dog instead of mammal, or the breed of dog. But then, so the first thing that people are going to agree on is dog. Then dog is going to become a taboo word, and people are going to agree on different things. Usually, though, people tend to go more specific as opposed to more general. So the second label is probably going to be the breed of the dog, and etc. So, taboo words help some, but they don't fully solve the problem. Yeah, this is we're not getting all the labels. Yeah.
Have you investigated like fundamental limits, like the length of the game or difficulty of that game?
Very good question. I do not know the answer to it.
And have you considered like activities that are going to be are really lucrative for businesses like market prediction or stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, these are all really good questions. I wish I could say more than that. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, we're about to do that with reCAPTCHA. So reCAPTCHA, we're transcribing books. CAPTCHAs also need an audio version for blind people. So blind people, apparently it's like 1% of the people on the web have some sort of visual impairment. That they use screen readers, programs that read the screen to them out loud. But whenever a screen reader gets to an image of a CAPTCHA, it can't read it because it's a program. So blind people or people with visual impairments usually need audio versions of the CAPTCHAs. And what we're about to do, so right now the audio version of the CAPTCHAs just tells you like some numbers, like 7, 3, 4, and it's distorted. What we're about to do is start giving people parts of old-time radio shows. We're just gonna give them little parts of old-time radio shows so that they're gonna be transcribing these old-time radio and TV shows as they are typing CAPTCHA. So we're gonna get blind people to work for us for free. Never mind.
Is it possible to recognize people who have some specific skill, like a bird watcher?
Yeah.
Naming birds, and then kind of encourage them to?
That's a really good question, and I think you can do much better. I think you can do something. I don't know how well you can do. But I think you can do, so one of my students is actually investigating, trying to do that. Automatically trying to figure out what you're good at and give you more images of that or more of that. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, but it seems like if you can predict people's demographic information, and if people with the same demographics seem to prefer the same kind of words.
Yeah.
They're going.
Yeah, you can probably do a lot better than just demographics. I mean, you can probably do something like related to. I mean, what my students trying to do is something like the way movies are recommended or books are recommended on Amazon. We just try to figure out other people that are kind of similar like you to you and see what they're good at and give you more of those things. Yeah.
So for a moment, you showed the literature picture and got feedback words. Can you use this to show different political figures and get that kind of feedback and actually
Yeah, maybe.
the political landscape, as it goes?
You probably could, although I imagine that you get much better data from, say, looking at search logs from Google or something like that. But you probably could get, yeah.
At this point, let's adjourn. There's food and drink outside, and